Good morning, I'm Regina Manyara and you're watching Good Morning Kenya right here on KBC Channel 1. It is budget day. What are your expectations? Keep tweeting. Our official station handle is at KBC Channel 1. Mine is at Ray Manyara. With us in studio is the CEO of Adam Capital, that is Michael Obaga. And in case you're wondering what Adam Capital is all about, or what it really means, it's African Diaspora Asset Managers. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
So before we took a short break, our reporter on ground, Regina, was doing a survey, so to speak, and a majority of Kenyans, actually, she was talking to, Kenyans as well as motorists. They've raised the issue of the high cost of living, the uncertainty around the fuel shortage. OMCs received their monies, but they came out and said, owing to the previous delays, we're looking at 10 days of normalcy ahead of the budget. Is this something that government can do to ensure that, Kenyans do not ever get themselves in such a situation when it comes to, supply chain disruptions in as far as petroleum products are concerned?
Thank you. So on the issue you're having, the crisis you're having around the fuel crisis, it's as a result of the panic. That's what they've said. But again, if you look closely, even before, we already had the broken supply chains, and then we had the whatever we call the imported inflation as a result of the broken supply chains. But generally, we need a policy around, our, the way in which we look at the fuel issues in Kenya, because whenever we have such a crisis, it means it's going to have a ripple effect across all, the goods we have, which are the consumer goods, and that now will bring some inflation. So there is need, I do agree with you, there is need for policy that is more clear and how government should be able to tackle such crisis in future.
Indeed. Yeah. We'll be looking at that or keeping tabs on that. Everyone is worried. Jokes have been made, especially on social media, with some opting, now we are biking now we are carpooling, others now Subaru drivers be on the lookout, no overspeeding, spare my foot. I mean, it's something else. And also we've been seeing other memes going around, families now measuring their cooking oil and such. That's where we are. And conversation around the Kadogo economy coming back. We will get there as we're talking about investment.
But I feel like the carpooling, there's nothing wrong with carpooling, and maybe it's something we need to have in the society, that it's not a must that everybody drives into the CBD. We can be able to carpool. Maybe government needs to look into the city's metro, the train metro system that is going to connect the CBD and the neighboring counties. Maybe it's going to be a solution to our transportation crisis we have whenever you have a fuel crisis. And maybe these are policy issues that can be able to solve more than one issue. So, for example, if government comes up with a high-speed metro system that is going to serve the CBD and the neighboring counties, it means you're going to solve the issue of traffic congestion on our roads, at the same time solve the housing issue, because now there is no need for me to live within Nairobi. I can be able to live in Machakos, Limuru, Thika, and still work from CBD comfortably.
Yeah. I think that's why they came up with the BRT. We are yet to see it come to fruition. That we hope the paint on the thicker roads.
And actually, the majority of these projects, for example, the BRT, the metro train systems, are projects that can easily be financed, not through borrowing, but through PPPs.
Yes. We'll be waiting on that. Now, to digress, there's an issue that Kenyans keep on, everyone that we're sampling, they're talking about debt, government appetite, borrowing appetite, from a financial point of view. What is your take on government's borrowing appetite?
Debt can be good, debt can be bad. Good debt is the one that is going to finance an asset. Bad debt is the one you're taking to buy, I don't want to call it a liability, but an asset that is not going to increase your income. Now, is government justified by the kind of debt it's having? Yes, it is. It has a right to borrow. That is one of the ways in which government raises funds. Now, is the debt being channeled into the right projects? Yes, government is channeling the money essentially into infrastructure projects, which are extensive when it comes to the funds.
Let me be the devil's advocate at that point. We had Kevin come out and say, yes, munaniambia kuna barabara.
Yeah.
And he spoke in Swahili. Ninaona kuna barabara, but I'm only taking dinner.
But you see, Kenyans need to come to a realization that a government has to spend. And again, for them to foster growth in our economy, they have to promote government spending. How does government spend? It spends through infrastructure projects. It has to create hospitals. It has to create roads. Because for us to spur economic growth, we need to have roads. We need to have the expressway. We need to have the SGR carrying goods from Mombasa, the port into the CBD and other parts of the country. So we are going through a crisis, but this short-term pain for long-term benefit. We might not be the beneficiaries of these projects, but when you look forward, like we say in investments, markets are forward-looking, then it means the future generation is going to reap a lot from the current projects that the government is doing.
Okay.
Yeah.
Kevin better understand that, and so many other Kevins out there. Now, the 846.1 billion shillings debt happens to be 6% of GDP in this year's budget. What is your take?
It's worrying, and the deficit, we should always ensure that our budget is within our budget. We saw a proposal where the Cabinet Secretary is coming up on how to cap the deficit at 400 billion and at 3% of the GDP. It's a good move, and it's generally tailored to avoid, in order to ensure that government doesn't again go, increasing the debt ceiling, which is currently at 9 trillion.
Now, talking about the debt ceiling and government going and increasing it, there's been talk that, there's a proposal by Treasury to raise the debt ceiling from the current 9 to around 12 trillion shillings. And yet we're here talking about our debt situation. Come June, a majority of our debt, or rather loans, are coming to maturity. Are we seeing a debt restructuring? Is debt restructuring actually in the offing? Because the numbers don't look so good.
Yeah, they have no option. They have to restructure and take more concessional loans. The majority of this debt is also going into recurrent expenditure, which is not a good thing, as opposed to going into development. Previously, government has been borrowing to pump the money into infrastructure development that was intended to have a trickle-down effect. Considering that government is spending more on infrastructure, then we expect some incentives in terms of the trickle-down effect onto the economy. But again, considering that infrastructure projects take time for us to realize the benefits, it means Kenyans will continue being bent out of shape, at least for the near future. But again, it will depend with the incoming government policy. The government that is coming in, the kind of policies they're likely to have, whether they are going to be more on GDP in terms of government spending. We don't expect the incoming government to consider concentrating on infrastructure as a way of trying to, government spending as a way of trying to grow our GDP, as opposed to consumer spending and private sector spending. Therefore, focus should be more on how government is going to accelerate economic recovery and also promote livelihoods by promoting the private sector and also the MSMEs, at the same time trying to promote consumer spending so that you can have that purchasing power to purchase your consumer goods and basic commodities. And it will mean that one now will be felt at the grassroots level, because currently what you're having is that GDP is growing at 5.6%, but at the same time it's not being felt by the mwananchi, because it's largely government driven. The GDP is driven by the government spending as opposed to consumer spending or corporate spending.
Now that you've mentioned that the incoming government, what is the fate of the Big Four agenda? Given that, this particular budget has been dubbed the legend Uhuru Kenyatta's final budget, the legend budget, the legacy budget, actually, the legacy budget. What happens to the Big Four agenda projects, given that we see even from the World Bank saying, in as far as stalled projects are concerned, they're at around 40% and they're holding a full 9 trillion shillings?
Now, like we said, and I agree, it's going to be a legacy budget in the sense that it's going, the Big Four agenda is going to have a very generous allocation because you're looking at a president who's going, and he really wants to ensure that his programs under the Big Four agenda are, completed, or rather, even if they're not completed, but there is enough budget around those projects so that it can have a legacy. So we're likely to see a very generous allocation in the Big Four agenda, infrastructure, healthcare, and education. And with that, we're likely to see a less allocation in agriculture, and understandably so, because the president is also trying to leave a mark in society. Is going out, but again, he has to ensure that every nip and tuck, especially in the programs that are under the Big Four agenda, is well taken care of.
Like, for instance, I know in manufacturing, and the cost of power has been such an issue, and under the BPS in the 2022-2023 proposed budget, around 364.3 billion shillings is going to go to the energy sector, and part of it is going to pay the second phase. The president came and addressed Kenyans and told them, hey, we're going to have a 30% cost reduction in the cost of power. Only the first phase has been implemented, but out of this 364.3 billion shillings is going to go to that. We will wait and see. Maybe then the cost of production in as far as manufacturing is concerned, will go down. But now my issue, when you look at the Big Four agenda, there was the issue of affordable housing. When we started and when we had these pronouncements, we were targeting 1 million housing units. It was revised down to 500,000. So far, we have 1,000 housing units that are complete. In as much as we're trying to be generous to see these through, there are some of these projects that are not likely to actually meet the target. From where I sit, I'm looking at housing. Or how can we jumpstart that?
I feel like government failed in the approach they took on affordable housing, because the concept they had is government coming in and trying to come up with their own projects, housing projects. But the affordable housing agenda can be best met through the PPPs. That is the best way in which government can come in to offer incentives and make it easier for developers, especially in the real estate, to come up with the affordable housing for their own, for their own clients, and also for even the most lowest cadre Kenyan who can be able to now be able to afford a house. So such projects are best met by partnering with the private sector, and we've seen it's possible through the expressway. Therefore, that is the way to go in terms of that particular agenda.
Projects.
Yeah.
So I remember the housing levy just was dropped.
Yeah.
Anyway, that's that. We are here now. Now, talking about the debt, and you have said that it's definitely debt restructuring is going to happen. We have IMF here, and it has been captured by one of our various dailies this morning, just saying that, the International Monetary Fund has set various conditions for Kenya to continue accessing loans. One of the ways, or rather one of the pressures that IMF is putting on Kenya, is to complete the medium-term revenue strategy that is expected to identify, a coherent tax policy and administrative measures to widen the tax base by at least 2024. So we are seeing even the lenders coming in and saying, hey guys,
you need to widen your brackets.
Yes,
yeah.
We need to widen our bracket. But now also the definition as who falls under the category of jua kali, or rather the informal sector. I find that there's an issue there. Is that
it has always been a definition issue, basically on defining who is really SME, who's informal, who's not, informal. And like we said, 80% of the economy is being, our GDP is being contributed by the people in the informal sector, hands down. We have to give it up to them. This is where money lies. And where there is cash flow, that's where government should go. So there is need to have structures in the informal sector. There is need to ensure that government has ways in which it's going to monitor the activities in the informal sector, so that they can not only tax the MSMEs, but also come up with ways in which they're going to address the problems so that they can be able to improve their livelihoods and then collect more. In terms of increasing taxes for the already overburdened Kenyans, no.
Please no. I'm with you on that. Please no.
You know,
I don't think we can
survey has it. Actually, if you lower high taxes by 1%, you're likely to increase your overall tax collection by 2 or 3%. Therefore, let's not overburden the already taxed Kenyans who are already bent out of shape in a crisis, in the wake of a COVID crisis. Instead, let's come up with structures that are going to increase our tax bracket by focusing on the informal sector, focusing on how we can be able to create more employment in the informal sector, and also protect livelihoods and caution the vulnerable in society.
Indeed. Now, we have been asking you what are your expectations of the budget. We expect that Ukur Yatani, that is the Cabinet Secretary, National Treasury, is going to be presenting the 2022-2023 budget from Parliament buildings as of this afternoon at 3 p.m. So what are your expectations? Just to sample but a few, our Twitter handle remains at KBC Channel 1. Mine is at Ray Manyara. Let me sample a few that we have gotten here. So we have Mohammed Fatuma says, concerning the budget, we want to raise the issue of engaging counties at their assemblies to have a budget on supporting parenting issues and empower parents on child protection. The other issue is family tracing when children need to be repatriated or reintegrated to families. This view is coming from members of CAC there that deals with matters of children. Also, we have Jacqueline from Kajiado who says, I would like to see allocation on OCSCs and capacity buildings for CSOs. Once again, the counties need to be well equipped in as far as children rescue centers are concerned. Then lastly but not least, from Adanje from Kilifi, if a ministry is set up for children, there should be a well thought out due diligence to avoid wastage and proper placement of departments with the intent of making them effective and operational. These are just some of the views that are coming in regard to, various stakeholders, what they want addressed. On top of, what we are getting from morning here is that Kenyans are concerned about the high cost of living, and they're really waiting to see what Ukur Yatani has in store for them in as far as the briefcase is concerned, to ensure that, they have more money in their pockets and they have the purchasing power when it comes to matters basics. Now we cross over to matters investment. When we talk about fiscal planning, we're also looking at, where we are in as far as the economy. And Kenya has been priding itself as wanting to be an investment hub for the region. Where do we stand?
Kenya still remains the investment hub in the region, and we're looking how, Kenya as a country is warming up into the Ethiopian market. We saw the other day the DRC was able to be the newest kid on the block on the East African community. Are we taking the opportunities as they come? Yeah, we are. You can see many, corporates are getting into the DRC, Equity Bank, to name just a few. Safaricom PLC is getting into Ethiopia. Yeah. Therefore, those are telltale signs that you are taking these opportunities without, wasting any time. Now, are they good opportunities? I look at the population, I look at the demographics, Ethiopia, DRC, anytime. So I'm looking at a possibility or an opportunity for our private sector in terms of expanding, their strategic plans and getting into these new jurisdiction, and also making their balance sheet as strong as possible. Yeah.
So now, let's come to the ease of doing business.
Yeah.
If we still are, the ideal investment destination, when it comes to ease of doing business, the rankings have it, but now on ground, what is the situation on ground from an investment point of view?
Yeah, it's still challenging going by the number of levies an SME has to pay to part with in order to establish business. On paper, it's easy to register a company. These days, it only takes a day or two to have a business name registered and a company name, of course, incorporated. Those are wins, and we cannot take them away from government. But in terms of levies being done by the county government are overwhelming to the SMEs, And we need lobby groups to come up with ways in which they're going to ensure that we have a uniform levy policy at county level in order to avoid the double taxation being carried out by county governments. Instead of them, they should come up with more innovative ways to raise their own revenue. Like I said, when you reduce high taxes by 1%, you are likely to increase your overall tax revenue by 2 or 3%. It's been proven. So governments, especially county governments, should ensure that they're making it easy for SMEs to operate, because without making ease of doing business at the grassroots level possible, then it means you're not going to collect any taxes. So governments should lead from the front, both county and national government, in terms of coming up with an ease of doing business. They come up with a one-stop window whereby you can only pay one business permit that is incorporating everything, so that to avoid businesses coming up with, all these matter of, levies being levied on them, and they're discouraging these
and also
SMEs.
creating a loophole for unscrupulous officers within the value chain to harass MSMEs. Exactly. That's one of the issues that has been raised by MSMEs, especially at the county level. Now, we've talked about, investor flight. Given that, the elections are around the corner, this happens every election cycle. So, are we experiencing it?
It's already happening.
It's already happening.
We've seen, a mass exodus of especially foreign investors from the Nairobi Securities Exchange, regardless of the Q1 results, especially banking results, which are so good.
Yes.
We didn't see a lot of activity in the Nairobi Securities Exchange as expected. We've seen a lot of flight to safety, whatever you call flight to safety. Investors, especially foreign investors, fearing of the eventualities of the August poll.
Yes.
So they tend to run away and they cash out so that they can be able to wait for the elections to, be completed, and then they can come back. It's a normal phenomenon. However, markets are forward-looking. Whereas they're making a flight to safety from the NSC, however small that might be or large that might be, they are going somewhere else.
And where are they running to?
Now, we usually say markets are forward-looking. So investors, we've seen it even with the crisis we have in Ukraine, investors tend to liquidate. Even in the US, they tend to liquidate their fixed income assets. We're talking about government bonds, especially in the US, and the money market funds. And they're getting into more, more speculative. Sometimes they're getting into crypto. Others are getting into precious metals, which are gold. Others are getting into money markets. Locally, money markets have really been doing well, especially the public markets. Government has been giving auctions, especially on this government securities, treasury bills and bonds. The coupons or the interest rates have been very attractive. We've seen there's really been an oversubscription, especially to the longer government papers. Those are government bonds and bills which are more than at least 364-day papers. That is the one-year treasury bills. And the result, it's as a result of the attractive coupons government has been able to give on these bonds, and also the foresightedness of investors that they want to get somewhere where they can be able to go long. At the same time, they get a very attractive return as they live through the period
secure investments.
Of elections. Exactly.
Secure investments.
But we've also seen a lot of innovation around collective investment schemes. We've seen new players coming on board, Adam Capital being one of them, through the Adam products being powered by the Adam Asset Managers Limited. So we've seen Kenyans, especially locals, moving a lot into the money market funds, balance fund and equity funds because of the main reasons of these funds are regulated and they are largely giving returns which are above the market average. And some of these products are very innovative, with links to M-Pesa, links to MasterCard and Visa card, many benefits coming on board.
Fintech, they're helping move things around.
Exactly.
Now, as we come to a close, I would want to give you 45 seconds, so to speak. Ahead of the budget, we've been asking Kenyans about their expectations and what they would want to see. Give us your parting shot in as far as what we need to prioritize in the next financial year, 2022-2023. Mr. Obaga.
Whereas this budget statement is going to be centered around how to enhance economic recovery, at the same time promote livelihoods, we are likely to see government looking more into the Big Four agenda. They're likely to be a generous allocation. But in terms of recommendation, we do recommend government to consider, debt restructures and also move into more concessional loans as opposed to commercial loans. Number two, government should focus more in terms of increasing its tax bracket, try to cast its nets wider in terms of collecting tax revenues, target the informal sector by coming up with structures, and lastly, to consider PPPs in order to make it easier for them to come up with infrastructure projects and other development activities in the economy.
Indeed. Very well said. We're not going to belabor that point. We want to tell you that we are keeping tabs on what is happening from various parts of the country, including Mombasa and Kisumu. As you know, all eyes are focused on Parliament this afternoon, where Ukur Yatani, that is the Cabinet Secretary, National Treasury, is going to be presenting the proposed budget that is going to inform government spending. I'm Regina Manyara, and we have been speaking to CEO of Adam Capital there, that is African Diaspora Asset Managers, none other than Michael Obaga. Enjoy your viewing. I leave you in the able hands of my colleague Betty Kiptum to take you through the conversation about, the economy and the budget that we are expecting this afternoon.